Hey there, BookTube. Good to see you again. It's your boy, Buck, and this is Buck's Books. And as always, I am here with my legal representation, Beefton Duke. Today, I want to talk to you about the book Sophie's Choice. What I'd heard about Sophie's Choice was that it was a classic, and that doesn't necessarily mean good. I hate most classics. Like Dracula, garbage, absolute trash. Catcher in the Rye, I'm not impressed. I like Frankenstein a lot. But like The Great Gatsby, do not get me started on how bad The Great Gatsby is. I might have to reread The Great Gatsby just to remind myself why I hate it so much. Because last time I read it, I was in high school. So maybe I don't hate it that much anymore. But a lot of my personality has been built around the idea of hating The Great Gatsby. So I'm loath to see it change. We're not here to talk about The Great Gatsby. We're here to talk about Sophie's Choice. William Styron wrote a book about depression called Darkness Visible. And I read that after high school when I went into Barnes & Noble and made my way book by book through the psychology sections and also the New Age section. And a little bit of poetry, but not a whole lot of poetry. I was more interested in like the epic poems. And Darkness Visible was excellent, but I'd never actually gotten the chance to read anything else that Styron has written. So I figured, since Sophie's Choice is a household name, it's everybody knows it, that would be a good place to start. And even knowing that, I walked in expecting to be a little bit disappointed. Because it's a classic, and classics never live up to the hype. When I was reading the blurbs about Sophie's Choice, it presented it as though it were sort of like a really dour and serious Schindler's List situation. So I braced myself for that. But I was like, I should probably read a book about World War II that means it. I've been getting increasingly into historical fiction, but almost entirely like ancient history and medieval history. So this seemed like it could be a good segue because it checked so many different boxes. So that's what I thought, getting in there. Immediate whiplash down the board. There were multiple instances of the whiplash. It was just snapping back and forth. The first is going to be the narrator, Stingo, right? Our man's name is Stingo because at one point his name was Stinky. And he repurposed the name Stinky as time went on into Stingo. But you don't get to lose the sort of undernotes of Stinky there, And that's part of it. So Stinky is this self-aggrandizing, aspiring novelist character. And it is absolutely Styron making fun of himself in his 20s, which is beautiful and honest, and I love that. He was just this bumbling horn dog 20-something writer aspirant and a perfect clown, perpetually outraged that his genius goes unrecognized. He gets this job working for a book publisher, and then he shuts down everything that's ever sent in, every manuscript he ever sees, because A, he's paid next to nothing, and B, all of it is embarrassing, and everyone's a plebeian, because no one can possibly match the scope of his enormous genius. And there is not a single late teens to early 20-something writer who isn't like that. And if they say they are or were, they're lying. Right? So Stingo alone as a character is an absolute masterwork, and his self-importance was the ideal backdrop on which to project all of the catastrophes in the book, these multiple huge catastrophic situations that comprise every part of the book that isn't Stingo. So you walk in and he's just yattering away about what it's like to be Southern and to profit from slavery and feel bad about profiting from slavery, and just working all of these mental gymnastics, to sort of maintain his perspective of himself as the perfect protagonist. So the second incidence of whiplash is finding out that Stingo's literal and figurative masturbation are not the actual point of the book, but Sophie. Sophie is the star of the show, with her narrative just zigzagging all over the place, starting with her abusive father, and then winding up in the camps, like in Auschwitz, and then working for Rudolf Hess. Hess? It's got an umlaut over it. I don't know how to say that word. Maybe somebody else knows how to say that word. I'm just going to say Hess. Rudolf Hess. And then her situationship with him to try to like connive her way out of dying in the camps. And then how that fails. And then his inability to deliver on any of his empty Nazi promises. And then the rest of the disaster. Like, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? For all of these disasters that she survives before narrowly escaping them, right? If you can even truly call it an escape, because she's dragging it all along behind her. And then the third disparate whiplash is just how many different choices Sophie is forced to make. So, like, it's Sophie's choice. So right from the jump, you're looking for choices. You're trying to find out... Good? You're trying to find out what Sophie's choice is going to be. And a little more than halfway through the book, it's lampshaded by one of the resistance fighters who's trying to convince her to go into Hess's basement and steal a radio. And Sophie's like waffling on it, and she says, "Sophie, you have to make a choice." You know? So, they said the thing, but like, that absolutely wasn't the thing that they actually said. I mean, they did say it, but that wasn't the eponymous Sophie's choice, because later on, she's faced with this Nazi doctor who makes her choose between her children, makes her choose which child is going to die. You know, which one do you want to keep? Not even keep, because she doesn't see him ever again, but keep alive. And that is more than likely the intended choice, but then there is this third unspoken choice toward the end of the book between Stingo and Nathan, and that becomes the choice between life and death. Though it really wouldn't be that much of a life for her, you know? Especially in the shadow of everything that she'd lived through. So it was a titanically moving book. And I'm sure there were all sort of subtle politics that I didn't really clock, because it was written in the 70s. So for Styron, this was part of his childhood. And for most of the people who were reading the book, they would have that just sort of set as the backdrop for their own lives. They'd have an understanding of, if not what the war was like, sort of the after-image that the war left, just growing up. And I'm reading it in 2024, so the zeitgeist is not appropriate for me to be understanding all of that. You know, but I was able to sort of glean these more universal themes. You know, these things that spoke to the human condition. So we got Sophie, this beautiful Polish refugee, daughter of a virulently anti-Semitic Polish intellectual who was killed by the Nazis in the camps for being a Polish intellectual. She's barely clinging to her sanity. She's stumbling around the city in a drunken stupor most of the time. Her reality's in shambles. She's dragging along trauma that most of us can't even conceive of. You know? She's withered and collapsing, but trying to maintain this veneer. The scars are still visible. Her teeth are fresh and new. And she's like this beautiful vestige of what her beauty might have once been. But it talks about the things that she's still recovering from, you know, not just the literal scars, but like how her body hasn't fully bounced back from the starvation, and how at one point Stingo walks in on her without any of her teeth, and it's just this transformation. Like he doesn't even clock her as a who. It's like a what is in Sophie's room, you know. And then Stingo himself, you know, he's got this good old boy American patriot who has never successfully done anything in his life, but he's playing the role of this savage southern aristocrat in front of his dazzling older friends. And he was raised in relative luxury, but like the luxury only happened because he's profiting from generational slavery. And like he's very guilty about that. Oh, he's all tore up, you know? He's super anti-racist himself and really just busted up about slavery as a concept and profiting from slavery. But he's not quite so anti-racist that he won't shut Nathan down when Nathan comes at him about these Southern politicians who were pro-slavery, who were themselves racist, because Stingo jumps to their defense talking about all the benefits they made to the infrastructure. And then Nathan himself. You got this burly Jewish microbiologist, right? This guy has it all. He's got the brains, the brawn, the easy charm, the effortless wit, the unfailing confidence, the foresight, the even-handedness. He is a new god walking among us, right? He's the kind of king that you would ride to battle and die for. Right up until he flips the switch. Right up until he splits and he becomes this monster. You know, this violent, abusive, sexual sadist out of nowhere. And you never know what's going to trigger him. So that's what Sophie's Choice is really about, after you get past all of Stingo's goofy jerking off stories. It's a meditation on the sadomasochistic tendencies of the human animal, right? And about evil. Like, the evil is very surface, but like you get past that and there's more to it. You know, there's more to it than just something as easy and gift-wrapped as human evil. It's this Thanatos drive is writ large in the atrocities of the Holocaust, obviously, and that's like the surest capacity for human evil we've ever seen. But then it's writ smaller in Nathan Landau himself, you know, because he's this meth-addled schizophrenic. He's weaponizing Sophie's survival of Auschwitz against her. He's using it to guilt her for surviving, which she's already suffering from. He's knocking her down and kicking her in the ribs until they break. He's pissing in her mouth. Just this extravagant human depravity shown again and again until he crashes out, and then he's begging for forgiveness. Oh, Sophie, what have I done? What have I done to you? How could I? How could you? And she keeps coming back. She keeps coming back. Again and again, she comes back. And I don't think that's just because she's dumb. And I don't think that's just because she's in love. I think the point is that she wanted to die. You know, she's carrying all of this grief and all of this trauma and all of this survivor's guilt and remorse and shame. All of the shame for all of the things she's done, successfully or not. For killing her kid. She made the choice. And she wound up with none of the kids. And now she's trying to live with it. But I don't think she could. And I think that's why she blew Stingo off. You know, that's why I think she left in the middle of the night and went back to Nathan, knowing full well that Nathan was psychotic and that Nathan was going to do his little Romeo and Juliet routine with the cyanide. She knew she was walking into death. And I think she thought she deserved it. And out the other side of that, all of the smarm is burnt right out of Stingo. All of his adolescent vim and vigor is gone. He's repurposing his perpetually yapping mouth to read from Proverbs on the train with some old lady. That self-congratulatory... The self-congratulatory devil's advocate is no more. You know? Stingo has changed by his experiences. That's what trauma does. It humanizes us, one way or another. Sophie's Choice is a masterpiece. If you haven't read it, you should read it. If you have read it, you should probably read it again. And then talk about it with me in the comments, because I'm trying to talk about this book more. Alright, that's about it for today's episode of Buck's Books. I'll be back to you within the week, I'm sure, with more content. Take care. See you next time.